can see that screen
Nope.
there, right?
There you go. You're good.
All right, beautiful. So the question is, how do experts like you, become recognized as the authority in their industry? Maybe you've tried things. Maybe you tried to, start a blog, or maybe you've done content creation. And a lot of people try social media marketing, which is all the rage. But ask yourself the question, what's been the actual results of these things you've been doing for months or perhaps years? Your blog has any visitors? Probably not many, not enough to be significant. How about your content? A lot of traffic there, a lot of buyers there? Pretty unlikely. How about your friends? Are they anybody other than your friends liking your social media posts? And if they like it, are they doing anything with it? Are they engaging? Are they asking to buy something, right? So as far as marketing goes, all these things we are told they're supposed to be helpful to us, but doesn't really work that well.
Well, especially with HubSpot creating the inbound world, and, they say that inbound marketing is the answer. But each of these you've listed, we've all spent time on it. We've all wasted effort. And the challenge is, how long do you give it until you call it a failure or a success?
Yeah. And so what else are people asked to do? Well, maybe we should say you should write a book. So the question is, should you write a book? And my answer is probably not. And I'll share why in a moment, because it might not be what you think it is. And now Josh is going to tell you guys who I am. I can just go to the slides, or you can describe me, or what do you want to do?
Yeah. I mean, you can click through and I'll talk over it. I think the understanding Doug's background is really important. Now, he doesn't have some slumdog millionaire story of growing up being homeless or raised by wolves or anything. But in spite of that inspirational story not being true, he has had a very successful background in media, in sales, in marketing. Won the Dale Carnegie Highest Achievement Award way back in high school. We won't talk about when that was, but was one of the youngest trainers for that organization. Went to Northwestern and graduated with a BS in speech and a concentration in TV and film. So he comes out of the media space, and he's written and been contributed to the Chicago Tribune, Daily Herald, MSN Money. So he's got a huge PR background. And I think that's important as we talk about your book, ideas, and how to get them promoted in the world today, because understanding PR and media is huge, and they go hand in hand with books. Right. Wrote books on all sorts of topics, from real estate with Gary Goldstein, Kent Emmons, and has been on stage with Kiyosaki and Bill Walsh and other very successful people. So he's got a huge background that he's leveraged to help other authors write books when it's the right fit for them. Right. So senior journalist with the Associated Press, as it's listed there, lots of pictures. These are the classic signs of authority, right? There's no Lamborghinis you're sitting in front of like people do today. You're actually working in the trenches of PR and media and understand what it takes to get books, get published, get content created that people pay attention to. Yeah.
And what other thing that's important is not just myself, of course, but who I've worked with. So we've actually worked directly with executives from these companies and many, many more. But companies you're familiar with, Pepsi, VP of Pepsi, Fujifilm, NASA, CEO of Stamps.com, National Geographic, even Touchstone Pictures. And while that might be impressive from a branding standpoint, what I'd like to stress even more, Josh, is the results that they've got. So we've had over 200,
that's all that matters.
Yeah, right. 230 plus Amazon #1 bestsellers to our team's credit. One of them, they won a Christian Book Award. Another one became an LPGA magazine contributor. Another one's been on Fox News, a national guest. And I did some math the other day. It's a rough number, but probably over about $17 million in new revenue for our clients as a direct result from their book. And there's many more things along those roads. But today I want to talk about why you might not want to actually write your book. I didn't say produce it, but there are some certain roadblocks that everybody faces when it comes to writing a book. And I'm going to cover these roadblocks. I'll try to talk slowly because I talk too fast. But I'm also going to cover how you can get over them almost instantly if you really sit and think about these roadblocks. And it's important because the roadblocks are debilitating to a degree where people think about writing a book for years. And when I say you can overcome them instantly, it sometimes comes as a shock. So let's get into them. I'll go through them one at a time.
And I think it's important too that these 5 roadblocks are chronic for everybody that tries to write their own book. Mm-hmm. And it's like any other industry where Like I came from the mortgage world years ago, and I would do 20 to 30 loans a month, but the average American's only doing one every 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't realize, and books even less, maybe people might get to one in their lifetime. So they are learning the hard way from the school of hard knocks every time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think these 5 roadblocks are really, really valuable for you as you listen to this.
And the first one is the one that's it's pretty dicey. It's like, well, what will my book do for me? What, how they don't think it'll actually perform, right? They want it to create a legacy, or they want to get more speaking gigs, or build a national brand, or even earn new business. But there's a lot of doubt, right? And there's some really good reasons for this doubt. And I want to cover the reasons first, because I don't want to puff this as being like, oh yeah, you should write a book, because maybe you shouldn't. And here's one reason you might not want to do it, because people say, oh, you should write a book. You've got a great story. But man, nobody reads that much anymore. Writing is tedious. And, there's about 13 million books on Amazon right now. And the rate of increase of the volume of actual new books coming out is increased by 40% from 2017 to 2018. That's 1.68 million new books in 1 year. All right. So where's yours in there? Right. It's a little depressing. Okay. You are a literal drop in the ocean with your book. So why bother? Okay. Why should you do this? And there is a good reason for it. I'm not completely being depressing here, but becoming an author still makes you special. All right. And I'll give you an example right now. Does anyone know who Andrew Grove is? You can raise your hand. Josh, you can check the message. You can raise your hand or say yes or no in the chat if you know who Andrew Grove is. And I'll let you know that I didn't know who he was before I did my research on this. Here's his book. It's called High Output Management. All right. Now, it's not, Tony Robbins. It's not a celebrity from Hollywood. It's a guy who wrote High Output Management. So is this an impactful, important book? Was this book influential? You're thinking, another business book. Well, CEOs from these companies, Facebook, Apple, and Airbnb have all cited this book as being the pivotal point of their growth, right? And when you add up those 3 companies alone, it's a whopping $1.2 trillion with a capital T of value. So is this book influential? Heck yeah. It's not a national brand. It's not on everybody's bookshelf. It's probably not in the bookshelves right now. I don't even know. What I do know is that these CEOs, Jobs at the time, and what's his name from Facebook and the Airbnb, they all said this book was the one, Zuckerberg, right? But there's a catch, of course. All right. There is a catch to this. You're not going to, write a book that, Zuckerberg's going to read right away. All right. He had to do some things for that. So your book might matter, but there's a big maybe there. Okay. It's not just the book, right? Okay. What you say in the book, your content is important. I'm not going to dismiss that. Why you say it is essential. What does that mean? Why are you saying it? Are you saying it to puff up your own ego or to solve a problem? And of course, the thing that I want to stress throughout this entire class today is how you build awareness of your book is vital and perhaps the most important thing with your content. All right. So your content is good, but it's just not enough. All right. This is probably one of the prettiest pictures of a Ferrari I've ever seen. Right. I mean, I don't know if you're into cars or not, or art, but this is a beautiful sight to behold. Look at that thing just speeding on the highway. Gorgeous, right? But that beautiful car, or if you want to call it content, is worthless without gas, right? So your car doesn't run without fuel, and your book won't run without gas in it. So let me cover that in the next few minutes here. There are 3 essential elements for your message to absolutely take off and run like a Ferrari. And I'm going to do a picture puzzle here, right? So some things on this image, some of them are easy to figure out, right? There's the media icons, the camera, TEDx, baby. But there's a little, the Avatar movie characters up there. These things are essential for your book to take off and to give it some fuel, right? Your customer avatar must be positioned intelligently inside your niche. There's sayings in marketing. If you've studied in marketing, you know this one. It's, a book for everybody is a book for nobody. You can't say, oh, everyone would like this. That's just too broad based. You need to have a narrow niche. And the importance of that cannot be overstressed. You could do a book about left-handed paper hangers in Orange County, and it could do well, all right, as opposed to a book that appeals to anybody with a heartbeat. A book alone, as I mentioned, is not enough. You've got to have your message in multimedia. So because people don't read as much anymore, you better be on some podcasts. You better get in some magazines. You better also be doing some video work, whether it's news media or your own. And endorsements. Endorsements are so powerful. There's a thing called heat maps, where a software analyzes where your eye goes on a web page. And I guarantee you, every time you look at something to buy on Amazon or on Google, after you look at the name with the address, the very next thing you look at, guaranteed, is reviews, 100% time. So the same thing is true for books and your message. People are skeptical. So if you don't have other people talking about you, validating you, endorsing you, you're that literal drop in the ocean. All right. So answer those questions for yourself. Who's going to invest their very precious time to read your book, right? What's your customer avatar? Where else will they hear about you? If it's just your Facebook wall, then your friends might like you and you might sell a few books. And that's the end of your author journey. You must get your message out into multimedia platforms. And of course, who else is going to tell your audience your value? Are you going to have book reviewers, people in your industry, not just your friends and family, but maybe even A-listers talking about, wow, that book is really powerful, like Andrew Grove's book was, talked about and endorsed by 3 of the biggest CEOs in the world. So let me give you a case study. This is one of our clients, Sara Makin, and she came to me a couple years ago. Lovely young lady, 23 years young, very little experience. She worked at a therapist's office for less than a year and wanted to go off on her own. And she wanted to start her own new business, and she called me up and said, oh, I'm thinking about starting my own practice, but I'm really scared and I have to rent. This is going to be $600 and who's going to listen to me? I'm so young and inexperienced. And I'm of the opinion that every asset is also liability, and that reverse is also true. So the fact that she was young and inexperienced, I positioned it for her to her advantage. And I said, Sara, listen, you're inexperienced, you're young, you're youthful, but you know what? The youth market will resonate with you better than anybody else. If my 20-year-old daughter wanted to talk to a therapist, she'd be more comfortable talking to a 23-year-old than some 50-year-old lady. So use that. And so we had a niche vision for her with consistent actions. And this young lady is a complete rock star. Her book, From Depression to Joy, A Parent's Handbook for Teenage Wellness, became #1 on Amazon in her category. In addition, she went from 0 to 18K in her first 6 months of launching this book and having her little practice. Her practice tended to grow a little bit, went from a sole practitioner to a staff of 12 now in less than 2 years. She's been on TV over 20 times. She's been lobbied the state legislator for medical cannabis. Thank you. And she's been featured in hundreds of magazines and journals. She doesn't have to call up anybody now. They're coming to her on a consistent basis, asking her to be quoted, to interview her. And her results are off the chart. She's got a second book out, working on a third one. She's done very well. And it's just a case of, do you have an important message? Do you have the confidence? She didn't, but we worked together, and there you go.
And I think the most important thing there is helping her find that avatar and really figuring out that. Yeah. And that's the part that I think so many authors miss is they're like many entrepreneurs. They create a solution and go around trying to find a problem to solve it. Right.
Yeah. Good point.
And these so many people write a book and then they go around trying to find an audience that'll read it instead of the other way around.
It's backwards, man. We'll talk about that at the very end here, Josh. That's a good point about reverse engineering your solution. So if you're concerned your book won't perform, here are 3 things you can do, right? To get rid of that first roadblock. Number 1, commit to a multimedia platform for your message. Sure, you can or should maybe create a book. I didn't say right. But don't stop there. Consider podcasts, consider print, consider video. Validate your idea before you write it. Like Josh just mentioned, you don't want to come out and say, hey, here's my idea. Do you like me? Like, maybe not. And then, of course, connect with influencers, before you need them. Can you imagine kind of writing a book and then calling up some A-lister you're interested in, say, would you endorse me? And he doesn't know who you are. We'll talk about that again in another section here in a few minutes. But it's really important to connect and connect with them before you need it. You know, dig your well.
Build those credit lines before you need to spend them.
Yeah, exactly. From the mortgage guy, right? I was gonna say dig your well before you're thirsty. A famous Harvey McKay book, I think. All right, so that's roadblock number one. Number two is sort of tied to that. It's belief in yourself. And this, it's funny, Josh, you've been on some calls with some of our clients when they feel they're just not interesting enough.
Oh, I was just thinking about one last week, right?
Right? Remember him? He was like, well, I don't know. I'm like, dude, you've changed the world. He's impacted his industry, but he was so humble. Mm-hmm. He didn't think his story was interesting enough. I mean, and he's got a good point. Like, who cares about little you?
Well, and the one nice thing is that's a mark on your checklist of knowing you're not a narcissist at that point. So there's that plus of being too humble.
Right. So it's interesting because maybe you don't have a story. You don't think you have a story. Or maybe you got nothing new to say or just unsure of yourself. Blah, blah, blah. You know what? You scream into the void and maybe you don't have anything to say right now. I'm not going to say you do because everybody's special. Maybe you're not. Okay. What if you're not special? Okay. Can you still make an impact if you're, for lack of a better term, if you're ordinary? All right. Well, I have an answer for that. Actually, I want you to ask this billionaire the same question. Do you recognize her? All right. This is a quiz. Some people will get it right away. Some people are like, well, who is that? Well, she's actually a movie star now, philanthropist, media mogul, best-selling author, television producer. And yes, you know, she's estimated net worth of $2.7 billion.
Yep, Chad got it.
Yeah, 1983 audition tape for none other than Oprah Winfrey. All right. Now, I'm from Chicago, so I was around when this woman, who was a reporter, decided to say, hey, listen, they were going to cancel this afternoon talk show that nobody's watching. She said, well, I'll take it on. And she gave up her reporting career to take on a talk show that was scheduled to be canceled. Bold move. What was she? Was she any of these things? No. What made her billions? You know, did she invent something? Did she write a bestseller? Did she become a movie star? Well, not in the beginning. Her fame and fortune came from this one thing when she had nothing, right? And you can do it too. It's very, very simple. You don't even have to write this one down, guys. If you don't have a story, confidence, or if you have inexperience in youth like Sara did, you can do one simple thing. Just shine the spotlight on other people. That's what Oprah did. She had conversations with other people. And as she got more experience with that, she brought on more influential and more popular people, and they elevated her status. They made her a billionaire. Think about that. She's interviewed successful people, celebrities, ordinary people, but she became a billionaire by talking to millionaires and lower, if you want to put a scale on that. And there's historical proof for this concept. You know, books like Think and Grow Rich by another reporter, you know, Napoleon Hill, interviewed other people about wealth. Chicken Soup for the Soul is a great example. Those guys they wrote an introduction. They wrote one page, and the entire book was what we now call crowdsourced, other people sharing their stories. And the last one, I haven't finished it, but Tim Ferriss's Tribe of Mentors, big book. He didn't write it. He just asked people questions and put it in the book. So leaders, true leaders, one of my key things about leadership is leaders empower other leaders. So keep that in mind. Doesn't matter who you are. If you think you're ordinary, and maybe you are, be like Oprah, all right? Let me give you another case study to back this up. One of my clients, Donald Burns, he's a former pararescue guy in the military. And if you think Navy SEALs are tough, they are, okay? But pararescue guys are doing the same exercises as Navy SEALs, only they're trained to save lives, not take lives. So it's even more dangerous for them. Now he's a restaurant coach. He had like one or two speaking gigs before his book came out into a very skeptical market. The restaurant market gets hit with consultants all the time, and they're very skeptical about anyone trying to help them with their business. They know what they're doing. So our solution with was very simple, and it was a controversial title with consistent promotion. So when I talked to Donald, he had his manuscript already done, and he talked about promoting and launching his book. And his title, I forgot what it was, but it was something very mundane and boring. But as I talked to him and listened to what his customers were saying, I said, well, you know, well, they're saying this word and you're saying this phrase to them. Why don't you make that your book title? He said, really? He said, it's a little rude. I said, yeah, but it's the language that they're using, so it's going to resonate with them. You probably want to know what the title is, right? Your restaurant sucks. And it's interesting because one of the things they teach in the military is to embrace the suck, right? When a thing sucks, you dive into it deeper and harder to get over your challenge, whether that's, you know, parachuting into a war zone or, you know, going into water for 4 minutes. So embrace the suck, unleash your restaurant, become outstanding. Became a #1 bestseller. His revenue jumped up by 60% after his book came out. He got 25 speaking gigs in Latin America, Europe, and of course the US the year his book came out. Launched a second book, #1 as well. So it can work if you work it. Be specific and intentional with your title and cover and whatnot, and then make sure that you have consistent marketing, promotion, and awareness on your book. Roadblock #2. That was it. Did he have a limiting belief in himself? Yeah, he did. Donald's book, Donald's, you know, former military guy, doesn't transfer into being an author. We all already, someone's going to read my book. But there are three things you can do right now, 3 action steps you can take to overcome that limiting belief, all right? #1 is connect with leaders in your industry. When I say connect, I don't say ask for favors, right? Like I mentioned before, you're going to hear this more than once. Connect with people who are more influential than you. You know, if all your friends are broke, you're going to stay broke. So get around some people who are doing much better than you. And don't just, you know, connect with them, help them. No matter who you are, everybody can use an extra like, share, or comment on their content. So do that consistently. You know, Tim Ferriss did that on his second book, and he did it for a whole year with about 500 book reviewers. And because of that, he had 600 book reviews the day his book launched and sold 36,000 copies because he spent a year building relationships with new people. He was already kind of famous, but he didn't stop there. He didn't sit on his laurels. He kept pushing it. And then, of course, designing your book around industry trend. Like Josh, I mentioned earlier, don't think that your idea is going to be the best in the world. It may be, but what if you're wrong? You know? So look at trends, be smart, be intentional, and think it through. Quick check-in. It's been about 40 minutes here. I want to wrap this up in about next 20. Are you guys receiving value? Just Google hands. This is thumbs up. This is great. Or thumbs down. Speed it up or slow it down or something like that. Just a check-in. So Josh, any
feedback in the chat?
Yeah.
Yep. All good so far.
All right, great. Just to check in. All right. Roadblock #3. Books don't make any money. This is true. Another one. This is a tough one. Spending all this time and energy and resources into creating a book that sells for $20, you might get 10 of it. The average author sells 250 copies. And by average, that includes like J.K. Rowling, you know, Victoria Steele. So if you took out the top 1%, man, the average book, if you take out the top 1%, it's probably like 2 copies. It's pretty dismal. Why should you bother then? The more depressing news from Doug. The average author total revenue in their entire lifespan of their book is under $500. The average author takes 6 to 12 months when they write the book themselves. The odds of winning the lottery are technically better than selling 1 million copies of your book. Do the math. There's some information on the internet. I looked this up. The chances of selling 1 million books is much worse than winning the lottery. So if you think you're going to get rich selling 1 million copies of your book, okay, but we better talk about some other things than just your book. This is some citations I put in there. Are you depressed yet? What an inspirational class, Doug. There's another way, guys. All right. There's another way. And that's to focus on your message, not the paper of a book. All right. Your book is a foundation. Yes. We talk about that a lot. It's important, but your revenue, that's the solution. The solution is much more vital than the book. And there are dozens of ways to monetize your book and your message. And that's really important. Book sales are only the start. How many ways can you monetize your message? I can come up with more ways than I can shake a stick at. Most people think, oh, book and do a class. No, there's many more ways. There's blueprints, checklists, retreats, classes, consulting. We do a lot at Real Bestseller. I'm going to show you some other ones that you can do no matter where you are in this process. And this is where the real money is, okay? It's way beyond just multimedia. Number one, obviously, create a digital course and a workbook out of your manuscript. Easy to do. Do a seminar, a live event, whether it's digital in these days or maybe in person in the very near future. One of my favorites is retreat. These are high-price events, someplace exotic, get away from it all and hang out with some cool people in a small group setting. Very, very lucrative. Product placement. This is one most people miss. I was talking to an author a few years ago who had, this is all adults in the thing, right, Josh? All adults here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. She had an adult toy store on Amazon when they allowed that. And then one day Amazon said, eep, we're not allowing that anymore, and they're gone. And she was making about $20,000 a month from her toy store. And now all of a sudden her business just evaporates overnight, just like that. So she called up about doing something. I'm thinking about writing an erotic novel. And I said, well, there's no money in those unless you've got a big audience. You have to build that up over time. So you have an audience. Well, I got my database. Well, that you might sell some books there, but a $20 book, why don't we do product placement in your book and talk about a scene in the book? I'm not going to get detailed there, but and insert a link to one of your products in that scene. Movies do it all the time. If you see any movies, all of a sudden there's a Schweppes truck there, or a
everybody uses Mac laptops.
Yeah. They're paying for that. They get the laptops for free. Then sometimes Mac or Apple will actually pay to put it in there. Audiobooks. Most audiobooks are done by publishing houses now, but audiobooks, the growth rate of audiobooks is double digit. So an audiobook generally sells for a higher price too. People are digesting those even faster than the printed word right now. Joint ventures, sponsorships. You could have another company sponsor your book launch or an event. Affiliate programs, both being an affiliate for somebody else or affiliating your stuff in your book inside somebody else's program. The big one, consulting. If you're up against another consultant in your marketplace, you're a #1 best-selling author and they're not, what's the edge there? I mean, you're going to get in the door much faster being a best-selling author than not. There's no downside to that. And the biggest thing that people forget about is, well, what about what you're currently doing? Will a book help you sell more of that? And the answer is yes. I'm going to share with you another case study on that part right there.
Well, and the one on the consulting that's interesting that I've experienced with my book is nobody questions why you're in the room anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You move up the totem pole real fast.
Yeah. Oh, you're the guy. You're the best-selling author. Okay, I'll listen to you. Kalani Vale is a client of mine. He's a financial planner. Okay. Oh my gosh. I mean, talk about a crowded industry. Limited speaking. He had done some great speaking. He's a good speaker, actually. He spoke for Tony Robbins.
Plus, that industry is restricted on marketing. Their hands are tied by the regulators, and everything's got to go by the compliance department.
Yep. They can't say anything about return to investment products. They're very, very restrictive on what they can say, what they can't say. It's tough. So he's like, how do I do a book about financial planning? And I started talking to him and understanding who he was, what was important to him, and values and whatnot. So we did a personal brand book that was indirectly related to his business. He loved superheroes. He was a single dad. Talked about lifestyle and blending your career and lifestyle and business with being a single dad. And I said, fine, let's do that. And so the book is called Superhero Single Dad. And it had nothing to do with financial planning, right? Became a #1 best-selling book. And guess what happened to his financial planning practice once he started promoting his book? His revenue went up by over 150 grand the first year of having his book out. He won a Christian Book Award, placed #2 for that. And his second book is also launched #1. So if the roadblock is not understanding, or you want to make money because of, but not from your book, I have 3 freebies for you today. I've got some checklists we'll put at the end of this class today. The next few minutes, I'll show you the link for that. But it's an author pre-work, products and books, and how to defeat writer's block. So those are free for you guys no matter where you are. All right. Roadblock #4, The big one. Can you run a business while you write and publish and market a book? Ugh. This is the one that people go, oh, no, I can't do that. This is the reason 84% of people have thought about writing a book and less than 1% ever do. Because, man, it just takes so much time. It's just, that's the reason. It's overwhelm. It's distractions of life and business, confusion of the whole process. Maybe
now during coronavirus, I've found lots of people think, oh, I have all this extra free time. I should be getting to stuff like this. But the uncertainty out there, the news, distractions, not knowing what's going on in your marketplace, it just zaps energy, zaps your RAM cycles to get this done.
Yep. That's a really good point. We think that, oh, this extra time will help me, but what are you doing differently now? Are you really being more productive with the extra time on your hands by not commuting, by not going out for dinner? I don't know. That's up to you. All I know is that the biggest reason for not writing, people tell us, is time. And here's a saying that we've all heard. And again, I want people to vote on this, all right? Busy people make time for what's important, Doug. Everyone's got 24 hours in a day. So if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. We've heard these quips, right? So you guys can vote in the chat if you want. You think it's a true or false statement? And you don't have to score it. Just write it in there and we'll take a look at it in a minute. Because now it's story time. I wasn't always a whatever my title is, help people with their books. I don't have a title. I had a laptop live.
Most people are saying true. One depends.
True.
One
all right.
False.
Cool. I used to be in the real estate industry, and I trained people how to buy real estate. It had a classroom and a radio show and all that. It was a lot of fun. But I had speaking gigs every month. I was talking to 100, 200 people a month about real estate. And every single seminar, where's Doug's book? I want to buy his book. I didn't have one, right? So I said, I don't have time to write one. My staff said, just take some time off and go do it. So I flew my plane to Turks and Caicos to take 10 days off to write, and I wrote every single day. I'm going to get this book done. I figured, hey, you know what? I'm a solopreneur. I'm skilled. I could do my own cover, my content, my title. I got the thing done in 12 days. So I'm like, yeah, I can write a book you've seen these things, write a book in a weekend, 12 days, right? You want to know what the result was? You ready? Here it is.
New York Times bestseller.
Unlikely. This is the title that I chose. Real Estate, yada, yada, yada. No more take skin off your fears and do it by Doug Crow. All right. Now, I haven't taken an official poll, but my indirect poll tells me this is the ugliest book cover in the history of mankind. It is absolutely, a person on Fiverr wouldn't do this. This is so bad. Title and cover is
it's hideous.
Yeah. It never got published because I was so embarrassed. So my answer to this question, however, do busy people make time for what's important? Well, if that were true, your books would all be done, guys, right? Silence, right? I believe productive people leverage time for what's important. And I can prove this to you because I've talked to people who are very famous, who've got New York Times bestsellers. They didn't write a word, right? Who does all this stuff? Did they write their book and design the cover and publish it? Do they have an editor? Yeah. Proofer, of course. Interior layouts, cover design, publishing, marketing, sales. These are all individual skill sets. And there's not a single human being on the planet that is exceptional at all these things. You might be a great editor, but do you do cover design? Or do you know Photoshop? You might be a good salesperson. Do you know marketing? Or do you know how to proof a book? All right. Let me give you another case study. Hervé DaCosta is a great client of mine. He's a consultant for Louis Vuitton, another multi-billion-dollar international company. He had a manuscript, had it for a while, but was overwhelmed by the process, all those pieces, the editing, the proofing, all these things. So his solution was to outsource the right team and give him international exposure. So his results were pretty simple. We made a #1 best-selling book in the USA. Obviously, we did the production on it, the editing, proofing, layout, design. Became #1 bestseller in France, of course, because he is from France. Renewed his contract with Louis Vuitton and expanded his personal brand exponentially. So you want to leverage your time? This is a secret that I'm not giving away today, but I want to hint it. I'll give you a hint for it. You need to outsource wisely. If you've ever outsourced or hired somebody, either internally, externally, nationally, overseas, you know the challenges here, right? Don't try to do everything yourself. Don't leverage your time, leverage your wisdom, okay? And be very picky with your team, especially your writer. We've gone through, oh my gosh, my chief writer and I have probably vetted well over 100, maybe 150 writers. And we've got like 5 that we like. I mean, be picky, be very, very picky about that. Now, where should you find these people? Should you go to these freelancing sites like Upwork or Fiverr and Freelancer? Maybe. I don't know. I've used some of those things for some issues, but I happen to have an untapped source. I mean, totally untapped, that has thousands of starving, high quality professionals to help you out. And I'm not going to share it right now, but if you ask me, I'll tell you. The last roadblock is belief that you can't write or can't write well enough. And the answer to that, as I mentioned earlier, is you're probably right. You know, you might be a great blogger, but can you write a manuscript? Or you might be good at writing articles, but can you write a manuscript? Can you write 150 pages and make a nonfiction book a page turner? Every single one of our writers on our staff writes fiction and nonfiction. They do what we call creative nonfiction. We make the boring interesting. And remember my first book, this ugly one here, right? The ugliest book covered in the history of mankind. There was a little more history to this. I'll finish up the story. Who remembers 2008? Okay, right?
Painfully.
Oh yeah, we all, yeah, Josh. So real estate market tank. You know, Josh had a mortgage company. I had a real estate company. I was $3 million in debt. I had 19 foreclosures, a bankruptcy, a divorce, devastation, no value, no personal value. I was pretty depressed and empty as a man. So what was my solution to this dilemma after having written the worst book in the world? Hey, I think I'll write another one. Man is the only animal that steps in the same hole twice, guys. So, but I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to go ahead and buy some courses on how to write a book and how to market it. So I bought good ones, bad ones, some stupid ones. But I connected with some best-selling entrepreneurs. They might have also been best-selling authors, but they were bestsellers, best-selling entrepreneurs. Guys like Kiyosaki and Greg Reed, Laura Langmeyer. And some of them became friends, and I had a chance to meet Zig Ziglar and Michael Drew, Gary Goldstein produced Pretty Woman Under Siege, Sharon Lecter, Rhonda Britton, and Michael Gerber. These people know how to do this, and it doesn't happen by writing, publishing, producing your entire book yourself, right? And I think Kiyosaki said it best. He said, "Are you a writer or an author?" Because he is not a writer, and nor is he a speaker.
He says it frequently. Yes.
Yeah. Right.
He's a best-selling author.
Best-selling author does not mean you're right. Okay. And you might want to write, and that's okay, but for God's sake, hire an editor. Okay. What's important is to study and become a proven business, and not just authors, but I studied people who had a business with their book. Just being an author is not enough in our game. You've got to have a business to go with it. And positioning yourself instead of using gimmicks. Gimmicks are okay to make a spike in sales, but over time, your positioning is what really counts. And at the end of the day,
and that's the difference. The positioning goes from instead of going from promotion to promotion. I mean, that's the typical small business, typical entrepreneur. They're bouncing from promotion to promotion, and it fizzles out, and it's exhausting.
Horrible. So if you want to write a book, I'm gonna put my microphone to Lewis Black here, and you can just see what he says about writing.
What's the worst thing about writing a book? Remember what it was like when you were a kid on Sunday late afternoon, just after a really great weekend. You hadn't thought about school at all. Just as the sun begins to fade into darkness, you hear your mother, and she says, "Did you do your homework?" That's what every day is like until the book is written, rewritten, and rewritten. You have homework every day. It never stops. It's always there. Your mother's voice haunts you every single day. There are few things worse in this life than homework every day.
And that is what it's like when you try to write your book yourself, guys. So my last case study here is a great author and businessman, Ariel Halevi. He has a consulting company of 140 people, so he's no slouch. He's got a real good-sized company. Smart man, great speaker, written some great articles, But when we spoke, he said, Doug, I've been trying to write my book for 10 years. He could not articulate a path or a process to make this thing come to fruition. So his solution was to talk to me, and he'll say in his case study, you can show it to you later. He knew within our first phone call, the book would get produced. So his book is one of my favorites. It's called You're Not Moving Slow Enough, Unexpected Formula to Lasting Influence. So it became a bestseller. He got more international gigs out of it. His revenue on a 140-person consulting company bumped up by 25%, which is huge for a company that size. Solidified his corporate brand, and he's obviously very, very happy. So if you don't have the time or skill to write a book or write it well enough, don't trust your mom's opinion saying, oh, yeah, Johnny, you're a great writer, okay?
You could do anything.
Yeah, you can do anything. You might be able to, but your mom is probably a little bit prejudiced. Create a bankable story, either through your experience or Oprah effect, however you want to do it, and use the best practices for assembling a world-class team. Is this the end? In your case, I call it the beginning. So if you've received value, you can raise your hand again or just let me know, because I have one last thing for you. I'd like to ask your permission, actually, because if you don't want to hear my commercial for 3 minutes, you don't have to stay on. You can leave. But if you want to hear about how this all can be put together for you, I'll need about 3 or 4 minutes to explain that, if that's okay.
Yep.
All right.
Rahina clapped.
We're going to clap? Okay, cool. I'm not going to take long to do this because I get right to the point. The proven process is simple. Number 1, create your audience before your book. Number 2, use a system to do your content creation, and then exponentially leverage your multimedia channels. We have taken 12 years to refine our process and our team to do just that. It's 3 big sections and 9 basic steps, right? There's you in the very beginning is an unknown author with maybe a book idea that might be fuzzy. We make it clear for you. When you're thinking about yourself, we're going to get involved with some focus groups and make your content all about them. So you're going from unsure to proven in just a matter of a month or so. Once that positioning is created and vetted by a lot of sources, then we go into systems-based creativity. We build a team. We help you write it. If you want to write yourself, you can. Or if you want to hire an expert writer, we have sources for that. If you start out as an amateur, which we all are at this stage, unless you're already a best-selling author, we take you to the creative stage to make it professional. And then the last section is simple. It's the most evasive for people because they don't know how to get in the media. They don't know how to go from unfocused to having a desired book, and they're a little bit lost. So we help you get found and build a launch and a campaign so that you can become a respected visionary in your niche. Now, it might not be worldwide, but like Andrew Grove didn't need to be. So we'll help you transform your idea or your idea for a book into a bankable and influential brand. So your question is, okay, great, Crow, what do we do next? Well, there's 2 things. You have some questions for us, which I'll open up the questions here and I'll close the slide. And then we might have some questions for you because this is a collaborative process here. I'll leave this slide for a minute. You can write this down, but then we'll go to questions. This is to get Josh or myself or Scott on the phone for about 15 minutes. In about 15 minutes, we can have a conversation to say, do we want to have another conversation or not? We can say, listen, let's talk about where you are, what you want to achieve, and what process might be good for you, because there's a lot of options of doing this. And just schedule a call. I'm very available next 10 to 12 days.
I put that link in the chat for everybody, so
okay,
you
thanks.
can click it from there if you guys want.
Great.
And I tested it, so it's good.
All right, and then I got this free gift here too, as well as I also have some downloads. You want to do that now, or wait till after questions over? Yeah,
we'll wait for questions to come in.
I lost it.
We won't make fun of you for your clicking around.
All right. Well, you want to share it again, or just?
Yeah, share it again. And we'll get those gifts out for everybody.
There we go. Oh, there we go. Okay, not there. Oh well. How about that?
Oh, missed it.
So yeah, DougCrow.site download. There's 4 downloads there.
We just see your desktop, so you can stop sharing if that didn't show up.
Well, I have skills.
It's okay.
Oh, I know what I do. I know how to do it. I can do this way. I share the screen, then actually start the presentation. That'll work. Here we go.
Yep, there you go.
All right. Here's a link. DougCrow.site/download. Go there and download. There's 4 good ones there. I spent a lot of time building those. I got some great feedback on the author pre-work to help you get clarity. There's a bestseller blueprint as well. And how to get, if you want to write yourself, there's the thing, how to get over writer's block, which is very prevalent.
Yes, big issue for a lot of people. I call it smart guy syndrome. They just overthink it.
Yeah, okay.
Just too smart for your own good.
All right, so put that in the chat too, and then we'll go to questions.
Yep. It's in the chat, and I tested it. It's all good.
Stop my share then.
Yeah, any questions? Anybody want to come in? We can either answer them in the chat, or you could just say, I've got one, and we'll make you live, and you can ask it directly. Otherwise, hope this was valuable. I think Doug's process is so solid, covering the parts that we've talked about, getting the market research done, finding that market fit, making sure that you're writing to an audience that demonstrates a need and interest in solving it. Mm-hmm. There's nothing worse than writing a book and running around trying to find people that are interested in it. And then the back end, after the book's written, Doug's PR experience. So making sure that you're able to get that coverage, and then also all the monetization ideas Doug has that are brilliant. Mm-hmm. So thanks, Eric. I'm glad this was valuable. And yeah, awesome, guys. Well, since there's no questions, we'll wrap up and look forward to hearing from you. Steven, what were you going to say?
Yeah, could you put that slide about the process back up and
sure.
Give us a kind of a ballpark about how much working with you guys would cost? What's your business model?
Yeah. So the business model is we break it up into 3 stages. So when you see these stages here, these 9 steps broken up into 3 stages, we break it up into even milestone payments so that your cash flow and outcome that you're getting at each stage is tied to progress. So it's not just a black hole for you. So typical author, somewhere between 36 and 40 grand from soup to nuts to get this whole process done. And then if you do parts of it, we break it up and it goes down from there.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So say that we don't want all of these things, but we want assistance with like the launch and the campaign.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can we do that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah. Yep. All of this is possible via a la carte.
Yeah, probably about 20% of my clients come to me with their books already done, manuscript done, and we help them, complete it and market it. So that's certainly possible. And that'd be a very customized conversation. It's exactly what you want, where you want to go, what your market is.
Right. Yeah, and so say, do you have like agent stuff? Do you shop books out, or is this all independent publishing?
I'm very passionate about people owning their own IP. And every single publishing contract I've seen from major publishers, you're basically a slave. They may or may not give you some advance, and they own your IP. And I'm not. And
you have zero flexibility around the marketing of that IP on the back end.
And
so
they usually ask for future any thoughts you have that only your thoughts. It's really bad. I don't like it. So yeah, I'm a big fan of self-publishing. Own your own stuff. Because right nowadays in 2020, they're not marketing you anyway.
There's very little benefit that we found with traditional big publishers.
I can go on for 3 minutes on this one. Oh, they'll put you in a bookstore. Well, who's going there?
Right.
But so if you're talking about 35 to 40K for the process, and you're only selling 250 books.
No, those are the average people. We've had people sell thousands of books before. It's
right. But where would you say the bulk of the money is coming from? Is it the seminars? Is it?
It depends. It absolutely depends on your particular case and business model. Yeah. So there's more speaking gigs. There's more consulting. There's the ability to create training courses on the back end while we're writing the book. I mean, the sky's the limit. So we're happy to talk with you about it. But it's a custom situation for your needs, and it's different for every author.
Yeah.
And the goal is that you're not making your money back by selling copies of the book. Let's say that on the high end, you could get $6 a copy in commission, royalty license, or whatever. Selling 6,000 copies of your book is not the goal to recoup the cost of this investment.
But do you have like agents? So taking this multimedia idea, say we have an idea for a book and we want to like shop it in, as potentially like a documentary opportunity or some kind of a TV or movie serial. Can you guys represent or no?
I have connections in the industry. I'm not an agent for that, but I have connections in that industry that I've worked with. Escape Fire, which was a documentary in the healthcare industry years ago. I have some friends in Hollywood, so I can certainly put you in touch with people. But again, that's a very customized conversation.
Very,
on where your audience is, where you want to go. Yeah.
Yep. Good questions.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Stephen.
You bet. Thank you, guys.
You bet.
You bet. Awesome. Well, anybody else want to raise their hand or unmute? And otherwise, we'll wrap up here in about a minute. And
hey, Doug. Hey, Josh.
Hey, Andre. Good to see you, man.
Hey, good to see you both again. And thanks for sending me the link. Talk a little bit more about the IP and the ownership piece of that. I know that at some point when I do engage, and you and I, we've already had our discussion, my attorney is going to want to have some dotted I and cross T conversations. So talk more about the IP and who owns it and all that kind of thing.
Well, it's really complex and really messy.
I was waiting for you, Sara.
It's all yours, Andre.
100%.
We're contractors. We are at your behest. We never take ownership of anything.
Yeah.
Even getting the little ISBN that has to be on every copy of a book.
That was my next question. Do you all register the ISBN?
Yep.
Well, no. Actually, we'll show you how to do it. So it's under your name.
It's under your name, but you own it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a stupidly messy, unnecessarily messy process. That is no problem, but yeah, so that's all yours, Andre. 0 of it is any of ours.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of it, is that we're doing all this on your behalf and
so
setting
in essence,
you up.
You own the process, I own the content.
That's it, 100%.
Yep. And we call them ghostwriters for a reason too. They don't even get their name. They're ghosts.
Yeah. They vanish into the darkness afterward.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Great question. And that really is a big distinction between this process and working with a traditional publisher, because I've got friends that a partner of mine, Perry Marshall, we work on a lot of projects, and he's been written by Entrepreneur Press. All of his books are at Entrepreneur Press.
Yeah.
He cannot give those away. He cannot repurpose them into digital copies and do things in his own marketing.
Nope.
It's all on lockdown, and he's a big author with them and has had a lot of success, and even he has no authority to do anything with those books.
Yeah, it's an actual contract with the devil. I mean, I can go
Yeah.
It's horrible stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
Not a fan.
Nope. Yeah, you bet. Awesome. This is fun. Anybody else want to unmute and chime in? Going once. Great, guys. Well, we'll wrap up. I hope this is beneficial, and we'll look forward to talking with you guys as you see fit. And hope this gets the wheels churning of how this process can be a great asset for you that takes the burden of getting it all written. Chad, looked like you unmuted. Nope, no worries.
Okay.
All right, guys. Have a great day.